Good morning, it's Brian. You are back on the Art of Startup War. I have got another phenomenal entrepreneur that we, Expert Dojo, have invested in. We were absolutely delighted to. This particular company is a really interesting one because it solves a monster problem out there, which is companies that's really struggled to be able to make the right decisions based on their marketing. Why can't they make the right decisions? Because they don't have the correct data in a simple and easy way to understand. So Daniel created a company, Aphrodite, which is pretty cool actually, because hell, everybody should name their company after a Greek goddess. But he created this company, and the entire idea was to make companies' lives easier and make their lives easier on multiple different platforms, whether it be payment gateways, whether it be your Shopify's or any other platform that you're there. Pull all of the data in one place where meaningful decisions can be made based on awesome, simple, and easy to read output. So Daniel, welcome to the show, buddy.
Good to be here. Nice to see you again, Brian.
And listen, all we're going to talk about today is most of the folks who are listening here are investors. And they are people who are looking to make their own decisions based on companies, based on the value of the company, the traction of the company, the leadership of the company, whether it can be a $10 million a month company, and whether they can see this turning into something huge. Obviously, we made the decision at Expert Dojo that we feel this can be a really huge company. And we're going to go through that a little bit later in the episode. But I would like, if we could start off, and actually, I would love to start off with a little bit about you. And a little bit about your journey. And I, I love the hero's journey, and I love how we get to at the end where Zorro gets to win, right? And he gets the girl and he gets to win, and then all of the baddies go away, and like, it's a good thing. But at the beginning of the movie, he's like getting his ass kicked. So talk to us a little bit about what the life of Daniel is like. And as you built this company, what type of things did you learn? And maybe especially some of the struggles that you really dealt with at the start.
It's interesting that you bring up the hero's journey because one of my mentors. So I'll paint the picture for you. About 2 years ago, at the bottom of the hero's journey, which is I had done a career in Silicon Valley after going to art school. So I studied art and technology in Chicago at one of the most awesome art schools, and I decided, products are actually really, really interesting, and just because 100 million people use it, and instead of a museum, it's still art, and it's still the one of the most important things we have in our house is our art and our products. And so I went into technology, and I was really fascinated with some of these constraints that you don't have to think about in an art studio. So Jackson Pollock, when he's making his painting, he doesn't have to worry about anyone except him. But when you're making an interface for American Airlines, 100 million people are going to use that. And you have to think about, the grandma trying to rent a movie, as well as, the super whiz kid who knows exactly how it is. So that just made me fall in love with technology. And I think the first time I used my own product while flying an airplane, like I knew that design because I made it. That was my okay, I'm doing tech for life moment. And I came to Silicon Valley, and I'd come from Europe, and was really thinking to find the 2005 iPod era of Silicon Valley. And I showed up in 2015, and it was Juicero and SaaS products, and I was like, oh, okay, well, not what I expected, but I am getting my ass kicked like nothing ever before. So I'm gonna work my way up here. I really like it, and worked for Electronic Arts, did a startup, and did the full thing. And it started as an engineer on one startup project, and led it for 3 years. The leadership were like, "Hey, this guy's just on the ball all the time. Let him run the product." And I went from some random engineer to leading the team, and then the product manager. And I think it was doing 25 million ARR. It was a crazy amount of stuff to give to a 27-year-old, but my mentors were really excellent. And then the startup got acquired, and I went to a public company, went through a lot of changes, and I was just looking at it, and it was I was at the finish line. I was like, wait, is this it? This is I'm I'm 28 years old. I'm 29 years old. You know, I'm at the finish line. Like, what do I do now? And I looked around and I was like, well, where do I go? Because, you know, the 2005 Silicon Valley, it's not here anymore. You know, it's very different now. It's a lot has been commoditized and streamlined. And it was like, almost like a, you know, I'd won financially and career wise, but like spiritually, it was like, oh man, like it's not here. And that's if you hear the story about the Uber, that's how I became an Uber driver. I just said, you know, I'm going to do a reset. I'm going to see what Silicon Valley is really about, and then started this ad agency with some friends because this crowdfunding thing, this, you know, global, like, even though we were in Silicon Valley and Silicon Valley is what it is, we were doing stuff all over the world from our couch, and that just made it incredible. And the lowest point was, do you know Hartmut Esslinger, the German designer?
No.
So in the 80s, when Apple was just starting, all their stuff looked like garbage, and they decided to hire a designer, or like someone to run design, and that was Hartmut Esslinger. They stole him from Sony, and he was the first person to tell Steve Jobs, like, everything you're making is terrible. Like, this all looks like just complete crap. This is awful. And he like mentored him in the 80s. And it turned out that he's still alive and he actually lives in Silicon Valley. So I was just like, you know, lost after this acquisition writing. And I sent it to Hartmut Esslinger. And we're both German, so I wrote him in German. And I went to his house. He was like, oh yeah, hey, what's up? And like just invited me to his house, which is like, you know, Zeus inviting you to his house. You're like, oh man, like this is crazy. And I showed up and he was like, you know, tell me about this crazy thing you're doing, blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, you know, I came to Silicon Valley for this thing that you and Steve were doing in the 80s, and it's just not there anymore, you know? And he was like, well, if you want that, you know, go to Shenzhen, like move to Shenzhen. And I'm really bad with languages. Like I can barely speak English or German, and they're my native languages. And so that was my lowest moment. That was like I had come here, I'd even found, you know, this Zeus who taught Steve said, it's not here anymore. And he's like, yeah, you're right. See ya.
The most depressing time ever. And it's, by the way, it's very true. It's not here anymore. The only thing that's left now is the money. That's it.
Yeah. And it's funny that you were talking about hero's journey. After I left his house, he said, business is an adventure, a hero's journey.
Wow. Yeah. So you feel it. And so your journey, what an amazing journey. So you go through that. You started off on the wrong end. You started off with absolute success of breaking through, with being one of the main people who helped get the breakthrough to where it was going to go to. And then you then say, well, now I need to actually rediscover my purpose, which brings to a really, really, really incredibly important point for startups, which a lot of investors don't realize. It's not really about the money. Like, the money is fine. Nobody's going to complain when they have a beautiful mansion in Beverly Hills and they can, you know, do whatever they want all day, every day without ever having to worry about money again. That's fine. But it is way more about the purpose. You give that with zero purpose and you will find an unhappy founder. You give insane purpose with half the size of the mansion, and a founder is absolutely thrilled because you're searching for that difference that can be made in the world. And that's the challenge with Silicon Valley these days, is they're not looking to make a difference in the way they were looking to make a difference before. They're looking to commoditize a venture capital package. It's like having, the only thing they're missing is Simon Cowell, right? So you then went through this journey, which was, let's find out what my real purpose, and where did it take you? Because now you have the marketing agency, you're trying to get to the other side. You've just been told that actually it may not exist there. This was obviously your lowest moment. How did you take yourself back from there?
Well, a couple months later, we hired our first employees. And I found that getting to define your culture and saying, this is really, really important to me. And in that case, it was the Rubik's Cube. this idea that like, this whole thing you think is impossible, there's no such thing. Like, do you remember that Adidas, or it was Adidas or Nike, the "Impossible is Nothing" campaign?
Yeah, great.
Yeah. That attitude, on my teams in different companies was always really important. But the idea that I could hire a team and that was like, just the mission statement, like, we specialize in the impossible, like that was like, whoa, this is cool. I don't even care. And everyone who ended up working here, we bonded over the same thing. And so it didn't even matter what we had to do that month to like what product we had to put out. Like the requirements from the market were just what they were. Because, it's a business, you got to have revenue, profit, you got to do it. That's the point. But the reason we come to work, every day is like, we're all working with people who we can rely on each other, that if we find something impossible, like we're surrounded with people like who specialize in it, like no pun intended. And like, it was our first trademark. That's how like fundamental it is.
And then how did the agency go? And then how did that lead you to realizing that you're not an agency with a technology product, you're a technology platform?
Yeah. So the agency went really, really well. That, we took on projects and we're quickly able to identify, like what's happening. And I think within like 1 year, Indiegogo, for instance, referred to us as like one of the top agencies, which, we thought was really funny because we were like, 3 people somewhere in a but we were like so obsessed with the data that we just like blew a lot of people out of the water because we weren't that good at marketing. We're like the language and the visuals of marketing, we were just learning it, but we were total data freaks. And so when we showed people the data, like even Indiegogo was like, yeah, these are like, it's like one of our top agencies. And the pivot to the technology is, it was just a reality during COVID that I think right around March, like right when like the first stimulus package came out, we had hired a bunch of people in the last like 4 months, because our demand just skyrocketed. And then as soon as COVID hit, it just went straight to zero. Everyone's advertising budget just went to zero overnight.
Right.
Yep. And I did the math and I was like, well, realistically, the science says this is going to take 18 months. That's how long a pandemic lasts. And up until then, we had no venture capital, all operating on cash flows. And I looked at our bank account and said, well, we have, if demand is zero, we have 3 months and then it's over. We're not an old enough company yet to have cash in the bank for 18 months. And we did our PPP and, we had hired everyone so recently that they were like, yeah, you're paid.
Oh, it sucks.
Yeah, so it was just like everything went wrong at once, and it was just like, well, we specialize in the impossible. Let's figure this one out. And it's funny. It was funny looking back, but at the time, it was like, it was like, oh, it's the end of days. Let's, yeah. And so what we talked internally, we said, well, what are our options? And we looked at this software we had, and it was like, well, if we really are pretty good as an agency, but our software is making us the best at, this data stuff, like, what if we just take this and, it's really early, but what if we just take this and we just say, if we've got 18 months, we might as well like pull a software company out of this and just reinvent it.
Fantastic.
Because
And at that stage, did you know what the big challenge was? So you had been an agency. So here's what's very brilliant about what you did, right? And it's much better than just going in and saying, "Oh, I see a problem in the market. Let's go out and build a software to fix that problem in the market." You actually became the market so you could experience the problem. And then you spent the time actually building manual solutions to something that wasn't available to you. And then you thought you didn't even really pivot. You just moved to a place of common sense, and you were fortunate that the world and all of the powers aligned in a very Aphrodite way to actually make sure that you were pushed towards a much, much, much bigger opportunity than you had before, which was in the agency. So I would say that all of this was extremely streamlined and probably very obvious to you at the time. Is like, look at this, it's broken. All we have to do is build something that makes it simple and beautiful.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, we wanted to be the best at what we do, and in terms of, I just did the math where I was like, are we going to be the best agency ever? Maybe, but if we do this software, like we're going to be the best software company in this category because
Yeah.
we already are, and it's a prototype. Like we have such a head start because we identified the problem like about 6 months earlier. Read a story on BBC, I think December 2019, there was a story that says startup goes bust after spending too much money on Facebook ads. Like, and they didn't even have money for refunds because, and you know, the people were furious. And this was like pre-pandemic. And the fact that a startup, you know, well-funded just went out of business because of Facebook ads, I was like, oh, I'm not the only one having trouble here. This is big. This is way bigger than like me and crowdfunding. This is going to be a huge problem if it's making the news. And it was on nobody's radar. It's like everyone just glossed over it. And I was like, this is huge. This is like the canary in the coal mine.
And that was your moment, right? That was your moment to say, we just became a software company.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Brilliant. And then how
Yeah.
did you go about that? How did you go about building and taking yourself to a place of, again, because you've now moved yourself. You had gone from you had gone from go into company, incubated, be very successful, get up there, get some money out of the exit, be happy, come out slightly bewildered, come back in again, go into an agency, be hit with a pandemic, successfully pivot into something else. But successfully pivot means you have to start again. Now you have to build the software from scratch. So how did you go about doing that? You already had some people in your team, you already had developers, which had you in a really good space. But talk to me about the mechanism of action.
So funny enough, the software was already there, but built for a different purpose.
Mm,
So so one of the problems of an agency model is you don't have reoccurring revenue, right? So like if you got no business, it's just there's nothing. So we actually had built this software already as an upsell to our customers. And so what we told them was we cost, you know, like $3,000 a month. And if you pay just $1,000 more, you get this software. So it was basically already sitting there in production, but had the quality of like an internal tool. So
nice.
basically, all the infrastructure, which is authorization, onboarding, all this stuff was, you know, at the level of quality of an internal tool, not a SaaS product. So we knew we had like a few months to just like take this, you know, beautiful working prototype, polish it, and just rip out all of the plumbing and do it again, but knowing exactly what it's going to look like because we've already been using it with people.
Yeah, so this is a great shining ray of hope, of light, right? This is Zorro, three-quarters way through the movie. He's coming running out of the mine. The explosives have been set off behind him. There's dust everywhere. And he just gets and he dives at the end and he dives out of the mine. He looks back and he's like, and Santa's like, well done, Zorro. So you've done a well done, right? You got your software, you have it lined up. How do you then get it to customers? And then how do you build a model? Because when we obviously have invested in you early. We've invested in you earlier than we do with most other companies. And we invested in you early because we believe that you're going to be able to break through in a big way. We also believe this is a huge problem for organizations. And the thing is, a lot of them don't even know the problem can be solved. So, how do you scale this from here? How do you take it from phenomenal idea built into great software, brought out to initial trial clients to make sure that they really like it, to then getting really good revenue through? How do you bring this to $100,000 a month in revenue and beyond?
Yeah, so the not everyone's going to be. We learned, you know, not everyone's going to be an early adopter. Some people are going to wait for other people to move, and what we found is, you know, if there's 100 customers you want to win, it's much easier instead of going to all 100 of them and saying, hey, we've got this product. Find, the top dog in the industry that all of those, most of those 100 respect, and go to them and say, we have something awesome. We want you to be the first person to have this. We want you to be, we're unveiling this, we're unveiling that. Be a launch partner. And it's so weird that just changing the mechanism, like, it's totally.
How very Clubhouse of you.
Well, it's so, it's like you can only eat like ramen for so long before you try something else. And
You're absolutely right. There are leaders in every pack. And you can either go to the folks who are really nice people trying to do really good things, making a difference in the world, or you go straight to the leader. If you can get the leader to adapt, 10 times out of 10, everybody else will do it as well because they don't want to be left behind.
yeah, and so I can't say the full details of the next launch, and that's sort of part of the magic. Is like I remember we were discussing like, should I present at AdWorld or not? Is it too early? Should a 3-person startup like help headline AdWorld? And we got a good price, and it's just once a year, and it's like, well, it's either in 3 months or 15 months, and we just went for it. And we went to another startup and a couple of agencies, and we said, hey, we've got this killer feature in mind. We want to build it. It's the new thing. We want to unveil it at AdWorld, and we don't want to, just say, here you go. We want to say, and it's been tested by X, Y, Z, and here's what they say. So like really bust out of the gate with it. And for some reason, that momentum seems to be like, it's like contagious, and everyone's like, of course I want to, of course I want to shout out at, AdWorld, and that kind of stuff, these presentations. And I even laugh where I'm like going back to like 2005 iPod keynotes to see like how all the FOMO happened and like what the language was and stuff like that, sending it to people. And it's like, oh yeah, this stuff used to be fun. It used to be fun to like have like secret stuff that you're going to announce and like launch it and then be like, and here are our launch partners and they're awesome and you should check them out. And, then next thing you know, there's 100 people see it and they're like, oh yeah, I've heard of this. This is cool.
Yeah, very awesome. And then, so that's how you go. So you start with the leader in the space and then everybody else then falls in afterwards. And then how do you see that trajectory over the next year?
Yeah, so we started in crowdfunding, and we're trying to we're trying to stay there until we get to 100K MRR. It's definitely possible some that will be able to support bigger stuff like e-commerce earlier. We have some people using it. It's kind of under wraps, but because crowdfunding is so fast and so much happens,
and it's very now, especially equity crowdfunding. Like I pushed you over at the guys at WeFunder. They're so like, if there's one thing that the world is ready for right now, it's equity crowdfunding and everybody being an investor in early stage startup. It's exploded.
Oh yeah, and then every entrepreneur is, we love it. It's awesome. It's democratized. And then you're hit with a mountain of data and you have no idea what's going on,
Right.
And yeah, we've been talking to Justin. He's really nice guy. It turned out he was really good friends with the same person we were talking to at Indiegogo. It's like we're learning about the industry, and it's like really showing up to these conferences, just meeting everyone instead of just sitting there and just being like, we built this awesome thing, here you go. And then like you have to really connect with the community. And so we're helping headline crowdfunded summit. Aphrodite licenses are in the prize pool for the top 5 winners.
Right.
So if you win the top 5, one of the top 5 crowdfunding pitches, you get a license for a year. So
I like it. I like that you're using this as your beachhead. Like you use the crowdfunding to get yourself up to a couple of $100,000 a month. You build loyalty in a community that's on fire right now. Then by extension, you're also able to build all of the other applications that you require to make sure that you've got that full extension of e-commerce solutions, and then throw the e-commerce out there hard as well. And that then brings you up to the $1 million a month. And then with everything combined, that's how you grow beyond that. And how much money are you going to raise this year?
Well, we did the math and we said, okay, if we really make this jump from crowdfunding to e-commerce, what do we need to support it? Because we took all the requests we get and said, okay, we are super, super watchful of our uptime. You know, it's 99% at the very minimum. We try to get as many 0.99s after there as possible.
Yeah.
And so we did the math and said, okay, to fully support e-commerce at our level of quality, we're probably going to need it, you know, an additional team, and essentially said, do a $2 million seed raise. And then we could actually hit the gas on all of these things that people are asking us to do in e-commerce.
Yeah. So what would that do for you? Let's say you get 2 million in within the next 6 months, which is extremely probable. So you have that money, it's sitting in the bank. What do you spend it on, and what's it going to do for you?
Well, it's a tiny team right now. We're 4 people. So I do the front end development. Gary does the back end development. And we have Maggie doing design, and Carissa does all the writing. And it's the engineering capacity that's really the limitation here. So if I'm, you know, on phone calls or doing other stuff, nobody's doing front end. So the first hire is a front end developer. And just the amount of QA that needs to be done, the amount of customer support. People still want that that high touch. Hey, can you help me figure this out? So essentially, just like when we upgraded from internal tool to SaaS, we had to rip out the plumbing of the technology. It's similar to this, where it's like, if we're supporting, you know, like 200, 300, 400 customers at once, there is no way any of us are going to sleep or really do anything if we're 4 people. And so getting team in place to support that level of quality and customer service, that's really what it's for.
Bulk it up. And the thing about crowdfunding is, right now people are spending a ton of money on crowdfunding because the crowdfunders, because they want to be able to get the best results. They want to be able to get it back. So it's great. So let's finish up with, share something with us about your vision of what Aphrodite is going to look like in the future. So you look at your platform, you're 5 years in the future. We've brought on investors. We brought on investors at $1 million, $2 million that they put in. We bring in another round of investors in a year's time at a higher round at $3 to $5 million for a baby Series A. And then we grow it from there. And then you go 5 years in the future and you look back and you say, I've created this. What is that you've created? And then just let's wrap that up with making sure everybody has your email address for any investors to contact you, and also that you give them the URL for the website as well. But share with us that grand vision.
I think it's that you just can't live without it.
Daniel, no pressure. Zorro has now got out of the gold mine. He's now on top. He's like the end of the movie. This is the final credits. This is when he's a hero, okay?
That it's just indispensable. It's if you're starting a business, you want to go somewhere, you're going out in the world, like, this is your GPS. Like, if you want to make money in crowdfunding, e-commerce, which is, it's going to be, most of business is going to be happening online, that is just not a household name, like, you know, an appliance, but like any business person, if they're worth, you know, their salt, will tell you, you got to get Aphrodite. Like, if you're gonna,
like MailChimp, right? So
yeah,
people talk about it the same as they talk about MailChimp, but they'll do it for dashboards so they can make sure that they can write. So when people talk about insights in marketing, they're going to talk about Aphrodite.
yeah, it's the gold standard.
Yeah, I love that. That's a great way to finish. And can you share everybody your details, please? Your email address and where they can see Aphrodite.
Yeah, so if you Google it, Aphrodite Analytics, it'll be #1. The URL is aphrodite.io, and I'm Daniel at aphrodite.io.
Wonderful. And if anybody needs to ask me anything, why we invested, how we invested, where we see them going in the future, I'm always very happy to share with any investors. My email is, of course, brian@expertdojo.com. Daniel, it's a pleasure. I'm damn pleased that we've invested in you. I'm really looking forward to where this thing goes in the future. I'm really looking forward to having our companies use it as they're doing their campaigns and going forward. And I'm really looking forward to us using it as we go forward as well. So just keep on the mojo, keep on driving this. Let's get this thing up to 200 grand a month and beyond.
Let's do it.
Okay, thanks, brother. That's a wrap.